Hello. In this video, we are going to talk about scandals and apologies. So, scandals in the public and how best to apologize. So, first, what is a scandal? So, a scandal is some kind of damage to reputation or some kind of public disgrace. So, something where you've done something morally, ethically, or legally wrong. And it's generally for public people. So private citizens generally don't have scandals. It's just for well-known people or famous people. So for this topic, we will need the following vocab and phrases. So we have scandal. So scandal is a noun. We have disgrace as a verb. Okay, so to disgrace yourself, to be disgraced. We have offend. Okay, and again, notice the pronunciation on that. It's not offend, but it's offend. Okay, so that sound is called a schwa, that sound, offend. So many words that start with an a or an in writing is actually an sound when it's pronounced. So offend. Reputation as a noun. So how well you are perceived by people, your kind of ethical, moral reputation from people. Do people think that you're a good person or a bad person, an honest person or a liar? Next, do damage. Okay, so notice the verb on this one. So do damage. So for example, your actions might do damage to your reputation. Okay, next we have image as a noun. And if we're talking about public, well-known people in the public, we might talk about a public image. So this is often suggesting that is not the real person. That is simply how their public relations company or how their manager has decided to market this person to the public. Okay, so an image or a public image. How do people perceive you? Are you squeaky clean? Are you the bad boy? Okay, so how do people perceive you in this case? This is your public image. Okay, next is make up for. Okay, this is a phrasal verb. So make up for is a more casual register for make amends for. So make amends for. So you have done damage to somebody or something. How do you make that right? How do you give something positive back, or how do you repair the damage you have done? So make up for. So it's 3 words and we need all 3 words to have that meaning. Make up for something. So the something is the bad thing that you have done. So make up for your actions. And lastly, we have damage control. So we have do damage, but we have do damage control. So damage control is trying to reduce the amount of harm to your reputation. So it's often used in a kind of negative way. That, for example, famous person has done something terrible and then suddenly their press manager releases something to the media about how they have donated a lot to charity or how they're helping the poor or something like that. So they're trying to help their reputation in some way. Okay, so we have do damage and we have do damage control. So damage control is trying to repair that reputation in some way. if we look at an example of a scandal, let's go all the way back to the 90s. So we have Hugh Grant, who still regularly works. He doesn't look like this anymore, but he's still regularly in films. In the 90s was huge, absolutely huge, right? So he was an actor, and he was dating the woman in the picture who was called Liz Hurley, who at the time was also very famous. So they were this kind of power couple because it was two attractive people who were both in the media, and so that was seen as more exciting for some reason to the general public. So Hugh Grant generally played this kind of lovable, posh, stuttering gentleman. So you can stop this video for a second and go and watch the first minute of the other video that is included in our links. All right, so I think that clip is a good example of his kind of public persona, a very kind of gentle, moral, nice English gentleman. So what was his scandal? So what scandalized him in the public eyes? So this is a very famous photo of two people. Certainly very famous to people of my age. That so we have two people. We have Hugh Grant and we have Divine Brown. So this is their mugshots, their police photo. So Hugh Grant was arrested, as you can see, in LA. And this was in 1995. This was probably the height of his English gentleman phase. So June 1995, Los Angeles, you can picture it. Hugh Grant was caught by the police in a car with sex worker Divine Brown, so the woman in the picture. So he was fined quite a low amount, $1,180. And this was shocking because it was against his public image. Okay, this kind of nice, stuttering, kind of English gentleman type. The fact that he would be involved in that kind of world was a huge shock, especially because he was part of that power couple, right? He was with Liz Hurley at the time. They were not married, but they were still a couple. So this was a huge scandal at the time. People could not believe it. However, because he was kind of promoting a movie at the time, he was already booked to appear on a talk show. So you can stop this video for a second and go and watch the other video that is linked. So this is the interview just at the height of this scandal. So watch it and think about the host reaction, think about the audience reaction, and think about how he does or doesn't apologize for what just happened. Okay, and again, bearing in mind, he is not a single man at this point in his career. Okay, so stop this video for a second and go and watch this interview video. Okay, so I think we can agree, considering what had happened, he kind of got off lightly in that interview. The audience certainly seemed to be kind of on his side, let's say. But let's think about the actual apology, or lack of apology, should we say. So we're going to think about what makes a good apology and what makes a bad apology. And hopefully, after we've gone through these steps, you will realize how many bad apologies there are out there, and maybe even bad apologies that you have made in your life. So let's start with a bad apology. Also known as a non-apology, because you're not really apologizing for anything. So we can always tell a bad apology or a non-apology because they contain certain phrases. Phrases like, I'm sorry if you were offended. So that person's taking no responsibility at all. All the responsibility is on the person who is listening. Right? Oh, if you were offended, okay, but kind of not my problem. I apologize to anyone who thought I did something wrong. Okay, we'll touch on these a bit later about why these are not so great, but these are very common expressions for non-apologies. I regret any offense caused. I'm sorry I said those things, but you were being annoying. Or, I'm sorry I said those things, I was being provoked. Sorry I said those things, but I felt defensive. I was being attacked at those times. All right. You could pretty much search any of these phrases and you're going to get a lot of results coming back. They are quite common non-apologies. So what's the problem? Well, a lot of these apologies or non-apologies are actually putting the blame on the other person. So they are saying, I'm sorry if you were offended. So in that case, hey, look, not my problem. You were the person who's being offended. I kind of feel bad that happened, but you know, that's on you. I'm sorry, but you're being annoying. Top tip, an apology should not have a but in it. Because again, that's kind of placing the blame on somebody else. Or certainly removing the blame from the person who is apologizing. I'm sorry, but it was a very busy day. You're putting the blame on the day being busy, not your own actions. So one thing with a bad apology is, or a good apology is, you have to believe that the person that you are apologizing to actually deserves an apology. So saying to anyone that was offended doesn't really feel like you think that the person deserves an apology. You're kind of saying, well, there's kind of a smattering of people who were offended by this. Not the important people, but just like, a few people, they get offended by everything. So again, it doesn't feel like that person deserves an apology. It just feels like you're opening your mouth and just making some noises to get yourself off the hook. We have a lot of examples of bad celebrity apologies, just through the nature of celebrity. They have to apologize to large amounts of people quite often. So we see these kind of expressions quite often, like, oh, making my fans feel bad is the worst thing, or I've let my fans down. So they're making it about themselves, and it's this kind of pretend self-punishment. It's this performance of being upset by the actions. So it's almost them becoming the victim. Just like, I feel so bad about what's happened. Like, oh, I can't believe it. Like, my fans feel bad. I've let them down. So again, you're taking the focus away from the people or the person who really deserves an apology, and you're actually reflecting it back upon yourself. So let's think about phrases that sound like an apology, but actually isn't. So we see these phrases a lot. So I didn't know it was wrong. So this kind of idea of ignorance, like, oh, I said something, but I did not know it was wrong at the time. Ignorance is kind of, again, removing the responsibility from yourself. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know it was wrong. It was someone else's mistake, but I take partial or full responsibility. Partial acceptance. We see this a lot with politicians, especially something might be online and they will say, oh, I didn't actually post that online. That was an intern that did that. But I accept full responsibility. So in that case, they're trying to make themselves actually look like the hero. Oh, I didn't do it, but I will accept full responsibility for it. Again, this is very weak. You're trying to make yourself look like the bigger person, the more morally correct person. I did not put that up, but the famous phrase, right? The buck stops here. You are taking responsibility for things that people below you in the power structure have done. You're trying to make yourself look better than you are. So again, a non-apology. It sounds like an apology, but it is not. This is not like me. This is not who I am. Okay, again, very common in the social media world. This is not who I am as a person. You may not like it, but it is who you are. You may not like that people know that that is who you are, but it is who you are. So again, it sounds like an apology, but it's not. You kind of say, oh, I did something bad, but that's not who I am. I'm a different person. This was just a moment of weakness. Get a lot of passive voice. We see this especially with companies apologizing for things. We get it with individuals, but companies, corporations especially love using passive voice. So X was done, mistakes were made, people were offended. And with anything passive voice, you are taking away the agent. So the agent is the thing or the person which is doing the action or causing the action. And once you take that away, you're kind of removing the responsibility for it. So you're creating a distance between you, the person who did the action, and the actual action itself. All right, next up. Something called nominalization. This is where verbs become nouns. So, for example, phrases like a misguided belief. So not I believe, but a misguided belief. Or this practice is wrong. So again, like passive voice, this is creating a distance between the person who did the action the person who did the action and the actual action itself. Okay, so nominalization is creating that distance. All right, next up. The absolute stone cold classic of using if. So I'm sorry if anyone was offended. Again, implies that it could be nobody. Maybe there's 0 people who were offended. Although if you are using this expression, chances are you have been told that it is offensive. So I'm sorry if anyone was offended. implies it could be nobody. Like, oh, maybe I'm not the bad guy, right? Maybe it's nobody. So again, words like but and if should not be in your apology if it's going to be a real apology. Unfortunately, this product hurt people, or my words were misinterpreted. So we're using passive voice here, or we're using the distance of putting the product first. My words were misinterpreted. I didn't mean that. Other people misunderstood my words. And again, maybe that's true, but it's creating distance between you and the responsibility. Okay, so not saying the product I created hurt people, or the products our company creates hurt people. We are creating a distance. And lastly, we have I ask for your forgiveness. This is putting the responsibility on the receiver, on the victim. Now, the person who received the hurt from your situation. So it's now kind of putting the weight of responsibility on the other person. Like, hey, look, if you don't accept my apology, then I can't control that, but I ask for your forgiveness. So this is kind of not fair, because you're now putting the responsibility on somebody else for your mistake or your hurt. Let's have a look at an absolute stone cold classic bad celebrity apology. So let's see what we can see in here for bad celebrity apologies. Firstly, we can immediately see we've got the word if in here. If my last Instagram video offended anyone. Again, the suggestion that maybe it didn't. Maybe there was nobody. We have this one here. So I had no idea the symbolic reference of that t-shirt. We're pleading ignorance. Basically, hey, look, you can't be angry because I didn't know. I'm a lover, not a hater. Which is a way of rephrasing, this is not who I am. And I thoroughly regret buying it. We're going to come to this word a little bit later, the word regret, and why we shouldn't really use it in apologies. He says, oh, my ignorance is no excuse, but I'm deeply sorry. So two things. Number one, still claiming that ignorance is no excuse, and using the word but, and then putting a cheeky little kiss at the end as well. So this is an interesting one. This was after Kevin Hart was due to host the Oscars, and then people went back through his comedy career and pulled out some things that were offensive. Now he gets off to a good start. So instead of I'm sorry if I hurt people, he's using a more declarative I'm sorry that I hurt people. But then it goes downhill a bit quickly. I'm evolving and I want to continue. My goal is to bring people together, not tear people apart. So this is a version of that's not who I am, right? It's kind of saying, hey, look, I know this looks bad, but that's not who I am. Much love and appreciation to the Academy. I hope we can meet again. So I hope we can meet again. It's kind of a rephrased version of I hope you can forgive me. So again, it's putting the responsibility on the public to forgive. So started well, but then gets less good as we go on. one last example. So this is, there's only 2 examples here, but they're 2 very good examples. So I'm sorry if I have offended anybody. Not my intention. I guess you could claim that is ignorance, right? It's not my intention. And then the rest of it, obviously, that is not who I am, and I'd like to think that I'm a little older and wiser. So basically, this is one long version of this is not who I am. So I'm sorry if, and then we have a bit of ignorance at the end, and then this is not who I am. Like saying, look, I'm only human. Like, you can't blame me, I'm just human. Well, you know, what's going on? Again, if you're interested in the background of this, then maybe have a look and see if it is something you could claim ignorance for. So we've looked at bad apologies. Let's think about making a good apology. So I got this from 2 researchers and 2 professors from, well, they run a website called Sorry Watch, and they kind of track celebrity apologies and so on. But they had a very good phrase to think about, that if you've apologized and you've saved your pride, you probably apologize badly. If you've not been humbled by the apology, then probably not a great apology. So, successful apology has 4 conditions. An act of offense has been done by the speaker or someone who the speaker represents. If it's a company and there is a spokesperson representing that company, fair enough, that's not the actual person themselves. The speaker must believe that the act was an offense against the recipient. So this is why we can't say if you were offended, because that doesn't show that you believe something bad actually happened, that you have offended against that person. The speaker regrets the act or the consequences, and the utterance is accepted as an apology. Okay, so these are the 4 stages or the 4 parts of a good apology. So, 6 steps. How do we make a good apology? Okay, so firstly, we got to use the words I'm sorry or I apologize. Regret, going back to the previous tweet, regret is not an apology. Regret is about how you feel. You don't want something to have happened, basically. Whereas sorry, by definition, it includes the other person. Okay, so we need I'm sorry, I apologize. Don't say I regret. Okay, then you got to say what for. And this is a stage that a lot of people skip because it's uncomfortable. You have to confront what you have done. So saying I'm sorry for last night is not a good apology, because you have to confront what it is that you did or said last night that is the problem. All right, next up. Show that you understand why it was a bad thing that you said or did. How did it impact that person or people? Why was it a bad thing? And again, this is a stage a lot of people skip because it's very uncomfortable to have to confront that. This is why your pride should be hurt. You should be humbled by an apology. Next, now, be very careful. You can provide an explanation, but don't let it become an excuse. it's very easy to drift into the I'm sorry but, or I'm sorry if kind of apology. You may choose to skip number 4 because it's very easy to drift into an if or a but kind of apology. Although it is possible, but you must tread carefully with that. So explain the actions you are taking to ensure it won't happen again. So to apologize is not just, I'm sorry for what I said. What are you doing to stop this from happening again in the future? Right? Can you make reparations? How can you make up for your actions? Now, obviously, this is easy if you have kind of damaged something or broken something. You can repair or replace the item. With emotional damage, it's a lot more difficult. However, what are you doing, or what will you do in the future that might make up for the damage that you have done? Okay, so these are the 6 steps, okay, according to McGathy and Ingle, for a good apology. You're going to say sorry and apologize. We are not going to say regret. We're going to say that you're sorry for what? So you need to confront what it is that you have done. Show that you understand why it's a bad thing. What is the damage that you have done to that person or people? Number 4, be careful, but it is possible to give an explanation. But again, remember, keep the responsibility on you as a person. Okay, don't be, as tempting as it is, don't be trying to push that responsibility elsewhere. Number 5, explain the actions you're taking to ensure that it won't happen again. And number 6, can you make reparations? Can you make up for what you have done? Whether it's financially, emotionally, or some kind of action where you are making that situation right. So some things to consider about an apology. Does the person want your apology? Remember, the apology needs to be received. Has the act that you have committed actually gone beyond that for that person? Do they really want to receive an apology? They may not want to hear it. Then in that case, you just have to live with it. At some point in your life, you're going to do something which is bad enough that you just have to live with that. There is no apology for it. The person doesn't want to receive it. All right? You just got to have to live with it. Also consider, don't try and align yourself with the offended person or people. Oh, to think that any of you felt bad is awful for me. So don't try and put yourself in their place. All right, it doesn't look great. So in fact, making my fans feel bad is the worst thing ever. I feel so bad about upsetting you. It ruined my birthday. Again, it's not about you. It's not about how you feel. You're not also putting yourself on the side of the offended person. Yeah, not great. It doesn't make for a great apology. Some useful language for an apology. So I'm sorry for ing. So using a gerund. I'm sorry for saying. I'm sorry for breaking. I'm sorry for doing. And we can use that for apology as well. So I apologize for ing. Or if you want to put that pronoun right in there. So I'm sorry that I did something. I'm sorry that my behavior, blah, blah, blah. So we can use that as well as a kind of connecting word. So for the future, making reparations, for example. So in future, I will, I won't, or in the future, I need to. So I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what I did. And notice all of these are using I, right? As tempting as it is to avoid that word, to give yourself distance, we're always saying I. So I'm sorry for ing. I'm sorry, I apologize for ing. I'm sorry that I did something. I'm sorry that my actions. I'm sorry for the way I responded, the way I behaved, the way I acted. I'm sorry for what I said, did. And in the future, I will, I won't, or I need to. Okay, so in some way that we're knowing how we're going to change our behavior in the future. So in that case, the 6 steps for making a good apology. Using the words, I'm sorry, I apologize. Not regret, but sorry or apologize. Say specifically what for. Show you understand why the thing you said or did is very bad. Number 4, again, be very, very careful. You can provide an explanation, but it's very easy to drift into excuse territory, giving some distance between you and the actions. Explain the actions you're taking to ensure that it won't happen again. And can you make reparations? Is there something you can do, say, or behave that in some way can make up for the actions that you took? And some final thoughts. Especially in a spoken apology, do not forget tone. How you sound makes a big difference. That soft tone of voice, and don't rush the uncomfortable parts. It's often a big temptation to kind of, steps 2 and 3, just to kind of say those as quickly as possible. But tone, the difference between I'm so sorry and I'm so sorry is a big difference, right? We want a soft tone. All right, so tone is about how we feel, right? We're showing. Are we using a soft tone? Are we using an aggressive tone? So there we have it. We looked at some scandals, and we looked at the 6 steps for making a good apology. All right, thanks for watching.